We're back to Neil Haley Show, and I'm with best-selling author Lynx Jenkins. Grace, Sight. I'm excited to have you back on the show, but you're going to talk about some of that process with writing Sight. Grace, go into that further.
Yes, thank you. So it was really very much a struggle at first when I first started out. So I had the scene where I got the opening scene for the book and I was super excited about it. So I was like, I got to write this down. So I go and I write down chapter one. And then I completely stopped for a little bit because at that point I hadn't quite figured out everything. The ending was actually supposed to be completely different from how it is now. And I started thinking about it because at the time I was in college and it was my last year of college. So I was really busy with everything. And then I think around a few months after I graduated, my granddad, he has a friend, and I talked to his friend who had actually published through Storehouse Media, and he gave me my editor's number. And so from there, I started to really hone in on writing the outline, getting things together, making sure that the chapters would flow nicely into one another.
Wow. Okay. And once you get that going, you saw the challenges, right? As a writer.
Oh yeah, it was super hard. Sometimes I could sit down and the chapter it would just write itself. I would be completely happy with it. I would be in my little flow state on my computer. I'm thinking, "Yes, this is awesome." And then there were those days where I would sit down, I would write the first word of a sentence and I would stare at it and go, "I have no idea what I'm doing. I really genuinely do not know whatsoever what to do here. I don't think anybody's going to read this." You always kind of have it in the back of your mind. Well, I don't know if this is going to be that great. I don't know exactly if anybody's actually going to like this. So it was a huge struggle for me at first, and it's always that tug of war, and I think it always will be.
And I think it is definitely is a tug of war because you just don't know which directions everything's going and what's going to work and what's not going to work. And really, the process. You understood the process, but then how do you put it all together? You have the ideas, you have the writing, but then there's so much more.
Yeah. Well, I essentially started at the very beginning of the story and I just went from there. I followed my little outline. I kept writing. For a lot of the characters, like I've already mentioned, they don't look like people that I know or anything like that, but they do have traits that I would see across different people, different general traits, and I put those in. And then sometimes the characters would want to do something different. And I would just go, okay, I guess we're doing this now. Because at a certain point, I mean, your characters, at least inside of my books, my characters are the focal point of my stories. So if your characters want to do something, then you should just let them be themselves and let them do it. Of course, you have your point A to point B, but in my mind, the characters and their motivations are always going to supersede whatever plot that I necessarily want for these characters.
Right. And I get it. And what do you think you learned the most from working with Storehouse on that process?
Personally, I really do think that I learned to back off as being as dense of an author, particularly within my sentences and my flow. I definitely learned about outlining and how to sufficiently plan ahead because before I had even started interacting with my editor, I did not outline whatsoever. It was just I started this, we're going to just keep going and let the characters do what they're going to do, which I still have a little bit of that. You can see that from time to time, but it is not nearly as prevalent as it was uh, this time around, especially with sight. So honestly, I think the main things I learned were outlining and writing in a way that was more accessible to people. Because again, I was in college, I was an English major, I was reading a lot of dense books at the time. These are books that most people today, they are not going to even look at in their lifetime. So I also had to think about that as well, because I would sometimes use words that you would find in a 19th century novel, but you don't really find that today. And sometimes if you use those words, it can be very frustrating because you have to look up the word to know what it means. And then you come back to the book. And a lot of people, they have lives. They're not going to have time for that. So you have to work within the vocabulary that's going to best appeal to your general audience.
Yeah. Well, I think that's so important. People could check out the book, and we're asking for 5-star reviews. If you can go to Amazon, you have a Goodreads now
Yes,
account as well, and people could check out Grace Lynx Jenkins' Goodreads account as well, or go to gracelynxjenkins.com and purchase the book today and get an autographed signed copy of the book. Go figure, right?
yeah, I will happily sign it.
All right. We appreciate it, Grace. Thanks again. You're listening and watching The Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.